In a world that feels so chaotic and honestly pretty directionless a lot of the time, what's the real point of the family? I mean, how can it be a source of peace and, well, holiness instead of just more stress? So today, we're going to dig into some sources that lay out this really timeless framework for family life, one that's aimed at a goal that's way bigger than just getting through the day.
So, the ideal we're talking about, the one presented in these texts, is the family as a kind of sanctuary. And the ultimate model for this? Well, it's the Holy Family. You see them here, this perfect harmony of work and love and life, all of it centered on a divine purpose. And the key thing is, this isn't just some nice sentimental picture. It's actually presented as a functional blueprint, a real plan.
Okay, so that really brings us to the big question for this whole explainer, right? In our crazy, noisy, modern world that's constantly pulling you and me in a million different directions, how can a family actually find that peace and achieve what it's truly meant for? What's its highest calling? All right, let's get into it. Before we can find a solution, we've got to get really clear on the problem. And according to these sources, the number one threat to the modern family is just a total lack of order. And that lack of order, it creates an environment of pure chaos. So the idea is pretty simple, really. When family life has no structure, no rhythm, no clear rules of the road, it just falls into chaos. And in all that confusion and darkness, well, good things like virtue just can't grow. The sources are actually really blunt about it. They say it's an environment where the devil flourishes.
So, what's the antidote? How do you fight back against all that chaos? Well, the answer proposed is it's both radical and incredibly ancient. It's about establishing a rule of life for the family. And the inspiration for this comes directly from the wisdom of St. Benedict. I mean, this is the guy who brought order to a collapsing civilization 1500 years ago. So, pretty good track record.
Now, I think what's so important here is how we understand the word rule. Because when we hear that, we might think of something oppressive or negative, but that's not it at all. It's actually presented more like the Ten Commandments. A structure that's designed to free us from all the bad stuff, from vice, and create the kind of harmony that's needed for every single family member's gifts and virtues to really, truly flourish. And this quote right here, this really gets to the heart of how to implement that rule. Prayer anytime is prayer no time. So true, isn't it? If you don't intentionally schedule the most important things, they don't happen. The urgent stuff will always, always crowd out the important stuff. So you're probably thinking, okay, how does a busy family actually pull this off? Well, the sources suggest adapting the old monastic schedule, the Orarium, into something really simple and practical. Like just start the day with a short prayer together. Mark a few key moments of the day, maybe for just a minute. The whole point is to create a consistent, simple rhythm that puts God right at the center of everything. Okay, and this is where it all starts to connect. This framework isn't just about scheduling prayer times. It's about completely transforming how we see our daily work. The sources introduce this absolutely crucial idea that just fulfilling your duties in life, that is the path to salvation. And check this out, because this is a huge shift in perspective. When we hear the call to do penance, our minds might go to these extraordinary acts of self-denial, right? But the sources clarify that's not what it's about. It means faithfully and lovingly fulfilling the duties of your state in life. Yeah, that means changing diapers, doing the dishes, going to work. That becomes the main sacrifice God is asking for. It's beautiful, really.
From there, the sources get into some pretty specific duties, starting with the wife and mother. She's described as the heart of the home, right? With this divine mission of faith and prayer, and even accepting suffering for her family. She's even called the bulwark of civilization. Why? Because she's seen as the primary person who passes on faith and morals to the next generation. And what about the husband and father? Well, his duty is presented as being the leader who provides that essential structure. His job is to establish the order, the peace, that's needed for the God-given gifts of his wife and his children to be discovered, to be developed, and ultimately to flourish.
And hey, this sense of duty, it's not just for the parents. It extends to the children too. The sources lay out 4 key obligations they have for their parents. First, to love them second only to God. Second, to show them honor and reverence. Third, to obey them as their divinely appointed guides. And fourth, to help them out, both spiritually and materially, whenever they need it. So up to now, we've talked a lot about the external stuff, right? The rule of life, the duties. But that's really only half the story. What the sources emphasize over and over is that all of that external order,
It's there to support something even more important, the internal work, the spiritual battle that's happening inside the soul of every single family member.
And, the first step in any battle is you gotta know the terrain. In the spiritual life, that terrain is you. It's self-knowledge. To get the humility you need to actually grow, the sources suggest this really interesting method of deep self-reflection, creating what they call a mirror of the soul, so you can finally see yourself as you truly are. Okay, so how do you actually build this mirror? The method is surprisingly practical. You basically watch for the smoke to find the hidden fires of sin and your disordered attachments. So you start paying attention. What distracts you when you pray? What are the things that consistently annoy you or make you sad or afraid? When you're upset, what do you turn to for comfort? What do you complain about? All of these things, they're the clues. And this table gives us an amazing framework for analyzing what you find. It uses the parable of the sower to map out your soul into 4 types of ground. So first you have the pathways. Think of these as your habitual sins, those well-trodden paths that are easy to fall into. Then there's the stony ground. These are your character flaws, the things that kind of incline you towards sin. After that, you've got thorny ground, which represents all those worldly attachments that just choke out the good things God has planned for you. And finally, the best part, the good soil. These are your virtues and talents, the fertile ground that you absolutely have to cultivate and expand. To really drive home why this inner work is so critical, one of the sources uses this really powerful story. It's an allegory about a room that catalogs your entire life. And in this room, the file for worldly amusements, every song, show, and joke, stretches for yards and yards. But the file for time I have spent in prayer, it's just this tiny little box, maybe 3 inches long. I mean, wow, what a sobering way to visualize where our time really goes, huh? So once you've used that mirror to see where the real battlefronts are, what's the plan of attack? Well, the sources give us a clear 4-part strategy. First, develop a true sorrow, a real horror for sin. Second, pray for the grace to even desire virtue. That's a big one. Third, practice mortification in little things. Learn to say no to yourself, maybe with an extra dessert or with your phone. It strengthens the will. And fourth, start the day immediately, getting up right away for the glory of God. So we get to the most important question of all, right? Why? Why go through all this trouble? The rule, the duties, this really intense inner battle. What's the point? What is the ultimate goal that makes all of this effort not just worthwhile, but absolutely necessary? And the answer is just, it's so simple and yet so profound. The entire purpose of this whole structure, all of it, is to orient the family towards heaven. That's the goal. Just like it says here, the sacrifices and the sufferings that are part of family life, when you accept them with love, those are the very things that beget children of God and citizens of heaven. This quote, this just captures the ultimate hope for every parent, doesn't it? The dream of being able to stand before God at your own judgment and echo the words of Christ himself. Those whom thou hast given me, I have guarded. To be able to say you did everything in your power to guard the souls that were entrusted to you and guide them safely home. So you see, in the end, the family isn't the final destination, it's the vehicle. It's a school for virtue, a training ground for eternity. And that means every single duty you fulfill, every small act of love, every prayer you say together, every single one is a step on that journey toward our true and final home. Which leaves all of us with one final and pretty piercing question to think about. Is your family, the way it's ordered, the love you share, the details of your daily life, is it designed to be a path for every single person in it to get to heaven?